Okay, everybody, it is me, Gregory Menorino. It is Monday, October 31st, Halloween. Are you scared? Well, maybe, just a little bit, right? Okay, so let's talk what's going on here, people. What you and I need to watch right now is this possible snapback with regard to the global debt market. I explained to you just last week that I believe there is the possibility of a snapback here. Let's talk about what's going on. For many weeks, we had this phenomenon of a global debt market sell-off. 10-year yield went above 4.3, and then of course we know how this played out. The MMRI crossed 300. We had Nick the Pig floated out with Mary Daly to say, hey, you know, come December, the Fed's going to pivot, and all this just reversed in a tremendous way. Okay, lovely. Market loved it. Stocks took off. Just perfect. Okay. Then, you know, we watched this phenomenon again, kind of, you know, burn out a little bit. And now it appears it may, okay, be reversing or snapping back. We need to see what's going to happen this week with the Federal Reserve. I explained to you yesterday. This is Fed week. Come Wednesday, we're going to hear about monetary policy, and it's going to be more bullshit, dog shit, cat shit, hippo shit, monkey shit, reptile shit, I don't know, whale shit, whatever kind of shit you want to talk about. We're going to hear again how great everything is. Our economy is doing great. It's progressing at a moderate pace, and then we're going to hear another thing. Listen for this. In fact, it might even start today more so. We've already started seeing a little bit of this. Inflation's getting better. Inflation's getting better. This is a complete falsehood. Inflation is not getting better. By the Federal Reserve's own measure, inflation has nowhere to go but worse. Okay, it's going to get worse moving forward. You know, their favorite indicator, consumer expenditures. Okay, lovely. And on top of that, as we know, the economy continues to crater, and every single forward-looking economic indicator, okay, every one of them, is pointing towards more problems moving forward. Duh. Okay, so you and I got that covered, but that's what they're going to do. Despite the fact that every single economic indicator is pointing lower, that we're not going to be doing well at all moving forward, you're going to hear how great we're doing. Our economy is moving forward at a moderate pace. This is Wednesday. And then the lie about inflation getting better, and then they're going to hear again how the Federal Reserve is committed to stopping inflation by raising rates, which is not the problem at all. It's never been the problem, and that bothers me to the core of my freaking being here. The lie that keeps getting, you know, fist fed to all of us via the propaganda ministry. Oh, it's a rate problem. It's a rate problem. No, it's a currency free fall problem. It's a money supply issue on a grand scale, which central banks continue to inflate the global money supply. Imagine that. You got central banks, and I don't want to say their respective governments because central banks are the governments, but the puppets that they put in place here, you know, all doing the same thing, finding any reason imaginable to continue to pull cash into the now, out of the future, to continue to inflate, to play the central bank game. And it's very disgusting in my view here. So on the back of that, let's just throw an eye over here at the market. So you got the 10-year yield 4.05. All right, so we have come up. So are we going to get that snapback moment? I think they're going to try as hard as they possibly can, and probably with a great deal of success, to keep the markets pacified until the midterms play out. After the midterms, I mean, you know, look, what were the words? BlackRock said all hell could break loose. All hell could break loose. You know, that's not Greg Manarino, that's BlackRock, okay? But I think they're right on target here. We absolutely could see, and probably will, see a snapback moment here in the global debt market, meaning a sell-off. the global debt market will start to sell off again, yields are going to spike again, and the stock market's going to get hit. I mean, that was the warning from BlackRock. And I think they're really on target with this, all right? That's the most likely scenario to play out after the midterms would be a sell-off here in the debt market or a snapback, as I warned about last week, okay? And that would definitely put a lot of pressure on the stock markets of the world. Okay, that's going to be just lovely and fantastic, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So, what's happening this morning? Stock futures are lower. 10-year yield higher. The MMRI, Manarino Market Risk Indicator, is above 280 again, people. 280. You and I watched the MMRI crater after Oink Man and Oink Woman were floated out. Tell the market how great everything was going to be because the Fed was going to pivot. Fed's going to pivot in December, not this month. This month, I already told you yesterday what I believe is going to happen. You're going to get a 75 basis point hike, and then come December, we're going to get a 50, and then more than likely, we're going to get pause. And the market is going to go absolutely ballistic off of it. Unless, of course, we get the snapback. Look, the debt market it's too big for central banks really to gain full control. But they're going to try. And they're going to do this by vastly inflating the money supply. And that is obviously massively inflationary. But you see, you're not allowed to know any of this stuff. All you're allowed to know is how they can lie to you, deceive you, propagandize you, distract you, tell you to look here, you should be looking over there. It's quite a phenomenon. Gold and silver this morning are relatively flat. Cryptocurrencies catching a bid. Bitcoin about 20,700. Crude oil falling under pressure, and the dollar is stronger. The setup this morning is not very good. I mean, look, like I said, we got a 10-year yield higher. We got a dollar relative strength, okay? I know how confusing this is. The comparative strength of the dollar is higher. And this phenomenon is not going to stop. We spoke about this well over a year ago, how this would play out, and it has played out exactly like that. It's not going to stop. The dollar remains the world reserve currency. It's the knee-jerk reaction. You see, look, the fact is, as you all know, central banks are in a race to the bottom. They're not going to stop destroying their currencies, taking the people with it as they fulfill their endgame to run the entire world, to create slaves from sea to shining sea around the freaking world here, people dependent on the central bank system. How twisted is that? I want you to think about this. Private entities run the economy and they run the financial system. With that said, whose interest do you think they have in mind? Yours? Mine? No. Their own. Okay? And the goal here of central banks is to fulfill their endgame, their agenda, to be the lenders and buyers of last resort, to run the world economy and financial system into the ground, to issue in a new system, to be the one world government that you and I have heard about since, I don't know, probably since we were kids. And it is absolutely playing out to be true. So look, that's where we are. That's where we stand this morning. I want you to watch the MMRI again. We are at 280. At 300, we move into extreme risk. The last time the MMRI crossed over 300, they floated out Oink Man. They floated out Oink Woman. Okay? You think that's a coincidence? Really? No? No. No coincidence here whatsoever. If we do see this snapback moment, look, this whole thing is teetering on a knife's edge. When I come out here and explain to you what I think is going to happen, it's the most likely scenario. Now, I said yesterday, I believe that this week was going to end higher with regard to the stock market. Yes, I still stand by that. But we do need to keep our eye on the global debt market. If this thing doesn't play out the way we want it to, and we see a sell-off here in the debt market, well, the market's going to get destroyed. But again, I think they're going to stretch this out beyond the midterms, or right up until the midterms. Once the midterms are over, I mean, BlackRock is warning everyone. They say, look, this could be catastrophic. Okay, we know the game. Always the same story here, and nothing is real. There's no price discovery mechanism behind a damn thing. It's all rigging. It's just all fake. All right, look. With that said, I think you all are up to speed here. Please comment. Let me know what you think. Keep your eyes on the MMRI, people. Free to everybody. Link in the description of this video. Just save that to your computer. We're at 280. We're 20 points away from 300 again. Are we gonna get there? We are eventually. We're gonna so surpass 300 at one point when this global debt market again begins a real sell-off, and it's gonna rock the foundation of the world. The financial system is gonna melt down, and I mean melt down by design. Okay, this is not by accident here. As central banks continue to fulfill their endgame, creating slaves to the system.
I was impacted like everyone else with watching the trucker protests, and it didn't matter what side you were on. As Canadians, you were seeing an exercise in democracy, an exercise in association, and getting their voices heard. Some people saw honking and disruption. I saw people who were on their last leg, people who had been bankrupted, people who had no other choice and way to go.
I think it's about time that we started getting away from the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. There's a large pool of individuals that didn't necessarily want to partake in any medical intervention, and they should have been allowed to do so without repercussion.
I believe that, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. See, I can sound smart. Here we go. Thank you once again for having it locked to the Launchpad podcast. My name is J-Man, and this is a podcast that celebrates and champions free speech. And I am so excited to have this gentleman on the podcast today. He has sat on, well, he was actually CEO of the BC Nurses Union, also a corporate director for NAV Canada, and now he is fighting for medical freedom in both the transportation and health sectors. Please welcome to the show Omar Sheikh from Sheikh Law. How you doing this morning?
Hi, good afternoon, Jason. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Right. So morning and and afternoon, we're in different time zones. So you're out in BC and you've been there for a little while now.
Yeah, I've been in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia for 14 years. Greatest place on earth.
Better than here, that's for sure, in our winters. Do you take part in any type of winter sports there, or are you still doing the whole jogging, biking thing when the weather turns there?
Yeah, I'm not a big winter sport or outdoors guy. I tend to stay away from animals and nature at all times. They don't like me. I don't like them. So we do go to Whistler. We do partake in the hotels and the dinners, but we don't actually go outside and do any of those activities that other British Columbians would do. But our family is unique like that.
Right. And of course, upholding justice for Canadians. And I think it's really interesting, obviously, coming from your background, sitting on the Nurses Union as a CEO, and then, of course, working for NAV Canada. And both of those establishments basically are the ones that you are basically jousting with right now in regards to medical freedom and transportation.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't characterize it that way. I mean, I sat on the board of NAV Canada. We don't have any actions against them specifically, and we don't have any actions against the nurses union
Mm-hmm.
specifically. What we have are ideological differences that have developed. That we saw very early on in when the vaccine rollout was taking place that you had these two camps, and it was a very absolutist position. So you had those who were pro science and accepted everything that was being said and cheered the vaccination. And then you had those that didn't want to get it. And one became the deplorable group, and one became the virtuous societal group. And I think that artificial divide was the first weak point in our analysis of whether or not we should make these mandatory vaccinations happen, folks. We looked at a lot more around virtue signaling and who was in the virtuous camp rather than what was going on behind the scenes and the impact on the individuals with their decisions they were making. And so we're ideologically separated from where I once was with the organizations, but I think that ultimately my hope is that everyone comes around in Canada to seeing Canadians as one people and not two divided classes of individuals.
Right. And what had you decide to take on this fight? I mean, I would assume throughout my experience with the pandemic that it would be kind of undesirable for people in your field to maybe take that stance. I'm sure maybe you've been called an anti-vaxxer. I'm not sure, but that's generally kind of the rhetoric that gets thrown out there when someone wants to uphold their rights or believe that they have some moral standing, some legal grounds in regards to their choice to take part in medical intervention.
Yo, what up, Keshav?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was impacted like
Welcome,
everyone
dude. How
else
you doing, man?
with watching the trucker protests, and it didn't matter what side you were on. As Canadians, you were seeing an exercise in democracy, an exercise in association, and getting their voices heard. Some people saw honking and disruption. I saw people who were on their last leg, people who had been bankrupted, people who had no other choice and way to go. And so I was more and more involved as that was taking place, and during that time, the firm was getting a number of calls on vaccine mandate issues. We like every other firm probably got I don't know 30 calls a day in the beginning of this from individuals, and initially it did not seem like something that you would want to take on just because of the reasons you had said. There was this divide in categorizations, and then there was a Saturday, and this is a real story in downtown Victoria, where I'm with my 12-year-old son, and we're walking along to the harbor, and there's a Portuguese couple with a Canadian flag. And immediately, a group of woke individuals accost these folks and start yelling at them and then challenging them, saying, "What charter rights do you have that have been violated?" And other kind of serious questions like that. And these folks, English was their second language, but they weren't lawyers either, and they weren't able to cite specific Section 2A or 7 or whatever they needed to. And so I remember saying to my son, just hang on here for a second. I can't just stand here. So I got involved. I quoted the charter sections. I told them to leave the folks alone, and then they looked up and they called me a white supremacist. And I knew at that time, I knew there was something fundamentally wrong with our discourse when Omar Sheikh is being called a white supremacist. Now, I don't think I would ever be allowed in that club.
Wow.
I don't think they'd let
It's nice
me
to
near.
laugh.
They'd probably let me in, but I wouldn't get out. And so, when I heard that, I knew that more than anything, this was an artificial divide. It wasn't based on anything real between Canadians. It was what we're being told about the other and how bad the other was and how good you are for getting shots 4 and 5 and 6 and whatever number you want to get to. And so, I felt compelled to get involved at that stage. I knew that it was a massive uphill battle. I had experience dealing with flu vaccine mandate cases through the nurses union in the past. And so I got involved, and very quickly we went from 4 clients who were excluded non-union BC public servants to hundreds in the public service sector, and then the aviation sectors and the healthcare sectors and the automotive sectors. And we started seeing the breadth of what had really occurred here, right? I mean, there's this, when we talk about the level of harm, it's not as simple as saying, oh, so-and-so's an anti-vaxxer, I'm going to go on with my day and watch Netflix. Because so-and-so was an anti-vaxxer, they've lost their income, they've lost their job, they don't get EI, they can't afford to pay their mortgage, they can't buy their kids birthday gifts, they can't participate in the Canadian economy. and they're completely finished. And so these folks are what you're categorizing as anti-vaxxers. These are your fellow Canadians that worked alongside you every single day throughout the lockdowns and everything else that was going on. And now, like for example, the healthcare workers in BC, you had pots and pans at 7 p.m. We were out there and making noise, and yet they were fired and bankrupted first.
Right.
They were the first ones that were tossed out the door. So when we look at that type of disproportionate impact, what results? The result has been despair, suicides. We had numbers of people in the different groups we were working with that had committed suicide. You have huge mental health issues and massive generational harm on these families.
Yes.
Is this worth it? So if the only reality you say is true is that this prevents you from getting more sick, and if that's what you believe, that's fine. But if that's the reality, then that's an individual decision.
Right. Well, you're representing Greg Hill, who is a pilot, one of my good friends that I've had on the podcast. And to echo your story in regards to the, first responders, frontline workers, excuse me, but a nurse that I know from the GTA, her name is Carla. She was also on the show, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking to see this woman who actually volunteered to take part of the first COVID unit. So she says, yeah, I don't know what this is, but she felt this duty to have to come forward and serve. That's what she wanted to do. And this is, of course, when there were no vaccines available. And that was okay. I guess people were dispensable then because we were in a state of emergency. And then when it came around time to when these vaccines were available, and she said, you know what, I think I'm good. I've done my service for the past year or so, and I feel comfortable with it. Then she's out of a job. And I think it's a very strong statement that you made in regards to it being a generational thing. Because this has divided families. I have friends that don't talk to me anymore, and it's just an absolute shame and really unnecessary. And when it comes down to upholding the law, and like you said with that Portuguese family, what is it constitutionally, like fundamentally, what is wrong with what just happened?
Well, there's many things, but it's a very convoluted layer of responsibility. So there's what happened, and then there's how you draw the lines of responsibility to the decision makers, right? And so if you're dealing with a highly regulated industry or government itself as employers, you are very likely looking at an analysis under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is based on our previous Bill of Rights. That the Charter of Rights and Freedoms has a number of different sections. In this case, we'd be looking at Section 2A, which is freedom of conscience. We'd be looking at Section 7, which is life, liberty, and the security of persons. And there we argue around the importance of employment, which is not something that's a fundamental right in Canada, but it is an argument that we make under there. We also argue around safety. And then we look at Section 15 of the Charter, which is equal protection of the law. And so within the land that is Canada, if you look at the top tier of those protections, of course, that's the Constitution of this country. And so there we will see, your main legal challenges that are currently ongoing around travel mandates. They have survived the mootness challenge, which has recently come up, which is fantastic for them. And so they're proceeding. We're seeing other challenges that are proceeding on charter grounds and human rights grounds. So when you go next from the charter, you then look at the human rights aspects of it, freedom of religion. We look at medical issues and prohibited grounds for discrimination. So what's gone wrong is many things depending on where you've landed in this process. So some people have had their religious freedoms violated and trampled on. Some people have had what they believe is fundamental medical privacy freedoms trampled on. Some people have had their charter rights trifled with, and to the extent it's justified needs to be determined by the courts. But they've had those rights certainly trifled with. And so you look at all of those harms, but ultimately it's in my opinion the reality of leadership is something that needs to be looked at when we look at what went wrong and where it went wrong. This country did a what I think is an astonishing thing during the lockdowns when this pandemic hit. People came together, whether that was people in the food industry, the grocery stores, the airlines, the hospitals, of course. People came together. The real divide began with our political leaders espousing that there were two classes of Canadians, and one was a fringe minority of bad people, and the others weren't. This allowed in my opinion, this allowed all of that pent-up frustration, unknown, and fear that was built up in the pandemics inside of people. It was a huge mental health event to have an outlet and to say it's these people that are still causing us harm. Now we have a defined enemy, not just this microscopic virus. So I think that's where the larger harm came from. And there you can start then seeing the policies that don't make sense. And today we're having people terminated under a 2-dose vaccination policy. So I think that harm has to be cured from the leadership of this country. I think the courts can only go so far and will only go so far. And unfortunately, the leadership is the one that we have to deal with.
And people, I think, well, I'll speak from my experience, assuming that people will think the same, is that, like, well, this is over now because we can travel, and it affects everyone differently. This is very dynamic, this whole deal. And for some, their lives have been affected not so much. Maybe the furthest it went for them was they just had to come home at work, or maybe they always worked at home. And then temporary shutdowns. But then in regards to the vaccine mandates, I could personally care less about not being able to go to a restaurant and things of that nature. I know that would be a crux to your existence. As you covered right off the top, you love your restaurants. But I feel that in regards to when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to travel, like detrimental industries to have these types of mandates in place. Number one, you're just talking about people's general health and not being able to see people that are potentially dying or have very little time left on this earth. And then also just losing really good nurses like the lady Carla that I spoke of because she decided not to get poked. And then on the travel side, it's not just a leisure thing, is that people have family all over the planet, and to think that they weren't allowed to spend time and lose years when, of course, we know we only have so many, and we don't know how many more that we have.
I hear your assessment, Jason. I think that there's two ways to look at mandates that I like to categorize. One is transitory decisions, so decisions that aren't trying to cause permanent change or harm, but are reactive to let's call it the black swan event that is the mandate, right, or the pandemic. And so here you're looking at a scenario where, let's say, you don't know what the virus is, you don't know what it can do, you're watching Italy, and there's videos of mass graves and other things going on. So in this environment, in my experience, making those decisions are never going to be right, but you've got to make some sort of effort. And so travel bans, lockdowns, banning public gatherings, I could see that. I can allow for that in that environment because it makes sense. I think when you have the benefit, though, of understanding, or at least the capability of understanding what is working, what isn't working, I think then you can abandon those transitory decisions and make some grounded policy decisions. The issue here is we didn't see that. Right, and so when you have the Prime Minister lifting the mask mandates on airlines just a few days ago, in contrast to everywhere else in the world and what has been going on with masks and the efficacy of masks, and even statements from public health officers on masking and what the impacts of that are, you know that we knew that information probably months ago. Right, and so you could have curtailed the impact of those mandates months ago. You decided not to. I think that's the real crux of it, is the permanent side of the harm, right? So there will have been some transitory harm, but when you start firing people, you start taking away their livelihoods, you start bankrupting them, you make it so that they can't travel around this country despite clear evidence that they're not posing any additional risk of harm. That, I think, is the greater area to focus on. But initially, you have to allow for decision makers to do whatever they have to do in reaction to what's happening.
Right. That's a very fair point. Thank you for reining that in. I often say, in regards to whatever that is happening right now, is not to get so caught up in all the other things, which sometimes is very easy to do. What I tend to focus on personally is just choice. Like what this all really just came down to is I was just fighting for my choice and helping other people come around to standing their ground and feeling comfortable about the choice that they want to make too, whether that is to have the medical intervention or not have the medical intervention. So thank you for coming in with that very rational explanation, because at one point we all didn't know what this was. And we do rely on government to some degree to step in and make sure that we're safe. And what we're talking about here is that there's some people that feel that there was a gross overreach in regards to doing so.
That's right, or that it went far beyond where you could have possessed the requisite knowledge to understand the issue better and perhaps not mandate.
Now, in regards to precedent, and I know in regards to law, is that often what happens is there's a predecessing case, and that it generally stands as the standard as to how judgments are laid out moving forward. And I'm not sure if that's just in criminal law or just stuff that I watch on TV. Probably stuff I just watch on TV. But it's still troublesome to me that we just had Western University. There's universities that are still enforcing these mandates. And we're in unprecedented times. Like, we have not seen something like this before here in Canada, I don't think. So how alarming is it to see things like this, or is this a just action by them?
Jason, can I just
absolutely, yeah.
I've got this
Sure.
weird kind of glow happening. I think that's better.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry. Okay, you can edit that out.
No problem. You're just gonna put the work
Aaron,
on me,
what's up,
huh?
man? Happy
I'm leaving
Halloween
that
to
in
you,
there.
homie.
Okay.
This ain't rebel news.
Fucking not in the mood, man.
Yeah, so in regards to just the precedents that are being set, like, are
What's up,
these
buddy? Happy
legal
Halloween to you,
actions
man.
that are being taken by the universities?
What
like,
I mean-
they're
what I mean
well
by that
within
is-
their grounds to say so.
That's what the court
I've
said.
just-
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
I said
the Western
exactly.
County
I think you
did
get it.
not go,
You get it.
in favor of the students. It went in favor.
I'm gonna show you a preview. I'm probably gonna
There's
stream some
been
Golden
a
Knight tonight. I'll show you the
challenge
preview,
on a
man.
private company that was released yesterday on the vaccine mandate that the court ruled it was legitimate.
Just for you, buddy.
And reasonable to do that. There have been arbitration decisions on the mandates that have ruled they are reasonable, and so. No, look, there are precedents that are developing every day. There are cases in different areas of the mandates touching on different things, like we talked about human rights versus charter rights, private rights, and other rights. And so, there are decisions coming out. Ultimately, the way the judicial system will solve this issue is that there will be an appeal and there will be a final decision, whether that's at the Court of Appeal level or the Supreme Court of Canada. But there does need to be some clear delineation of what the rights are of employees and what the rights are of employees, and more generally what the rights are of citizens of this country to not want to get a level of economic coercion where they
Fucking
lose
ridiculous,
everything,
man.
they don't comply with the
You cheered me up, man. You made me smile.
And Omar, what have you learned most throughout going through this experience?
You made me laugh,
I'm
man.
sure this has been unique.
I'll probably wear that
That's
tonight.
been
Play
trying, as
fucking
we
Golden
have
Knight. It's
covered.
disintegrating
So what
though.
would be your number one?
It's like 20
takeaway
years
in
old. It's from the
regards to
90s,
what
man.
This experience has given you.
Yeah, I've learned
Got
that
the fucking blue
Canadians
shirt.
are for the large part one of the most amazing people out there. What I saw with the folks that were bankrupted, that are still bankrupted, that are still impacted, the thousands of folks in the various different groups that we work with across this country, is I saw people come together. I saw people supporting each other, even when the government wouldn't. They set up hardship funds and helped each other, and they're still doing that every single day. People like Greg that you mentioned and others in different societies that we represent do that. So I saw the best of this group that had mostly lost everything and had every reason to give up and just be angry. I saw them come together and support each other. Now, we don't know if we're going to be successful in any of these cases, and we're quite honest and open about that as the environment is what it is. But we do know that if we don't try, and if we don't do anything, then we just simply accept the status quo. We're not prepared to do that. The clients aren't prepared to do that. And so I'm hopeful that what I'm seeing translates to the broader population. And one of the things that gives me that hope is the third shot of vaccination, where 40% or so of Canadians have not received their third dose. That is a significant number of people who have said stop or enough for whatever reason. And so that leads me to believe it's very difficult to bring back those mandates, because we're going to impact a significant number of people. So I see hope as well.
Right. And now for people that feel that they've been done wrong, that there's been illegal action taken against them, whether it be they've been placed on leave without pay or whether they lost their job, at this point, is there any recourse for them legally that they could move forward on to maybe, whether it be collect a severance, maybe get their job back, whatever it might be? What would be some action steps that maybe they could take to get on that track?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways to do that, depending on how your employment is structured. So right now, we know that a number of grievances are underway in the labor arbitration world, trying to seek reinstatement for people and getting people back into their jobs. On the civil claim side, you can go in for a wrongful dismissal claim, depending on the company and the policy. Of course, there's specifics to it, but potentially a wrongful dismissal claim, and sue for your severance that you would otherwise be entitled to and didn't get. And so that's another way to do that. The other way that people are supporting is there are numbers of not-for-profit societies that have been set up around different provinces and different industries that are launching legal campaigns on a variety of areas and subjects to do with the mandates, and they can always join one of those groups and get involved as well.
Right. And I'd also like to say a thank you. I had been watching another interview, and I know that you took on some cases and helped out some people that didn't have the resources at the time. Now, that's a while back. I'm not saying everyone load this guy up with a whole bunch of work, but just to say thank you, because that's not an easy thing to do. Everyone's out there trying to make a living, and the fact that you would take some of your dedicated time, especially with the family, your friends, and your own legal practice, and to be able to share that time with other people, I think says a lot about who you are, Omar, and I really have enjoyed this chat that we had today.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor working with everybody, and it's been a pleasure being on your show. Thanks for having me.
All right, absolutely. And maybe we'll talk again sometime in the future. And thank you so much to everyone for having it locked. I hope that you found this to be helpful. I believe that Omar has resonated with you, maybe giving you some hope, a little bit more understanding. And until next time, you take care, be well, and love simply because you can. Thank you very much, Omar. That was
I love that sign off, Jason. That was great.
Yeah, that's like my podcast is all about. It's which is why I genuinely appreciated when you kind of scaled things back a little bit, because with everything that went on over the past 3 years, it's so easy to kind of just get caught up or on a tangent, and then you completely kind of forget what frustrated you in the beginning. And I think it's really important people to come back to the fundamentals, which was for me just choice, and trying to come at this from a place of love and abundance. And I want people from your rebel thing, the left and the right. I want the left to stick around just as much as the right, because when we lose the opposition, then how do you ever come to greater understanding and better policy?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It's the old Plato playbook, right? Is that dialogue is the root of all knowledge, and so absolutely we need to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm very intuitive in regards to the people that I have on my show, and I'm always looking for that right person. And I came across you, and I just knew you were that guy. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to have this chat with me.
Me too. I look forward to seeing the podcast.
Good, and I'll let you know. I'll put that out. It's going to start in about 2 weeks. I launch my next season, and I would hope that maybe somewhere down the road, if there was something else that popped up, maybe we could have a chat about it.
Happy to.
Absolutely. All right, you take care, Omar.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters Plus here on France 24.
Why
I'm Mark
the
Owen. In this
fuck is it
special
requesting this
edition,
bullshit?
The hidden face of the Qatar
Fuck
World
this
Cup.
recommendation.
Football's biggest showcase event is soon to kick off in the Gulf state. 6,500 migrant workers lost their lives in the construction of the stadiums and infrastructure to enable soccer to be played in the intense heat of Qatar. Well, behind the scenes, many more are being exploited, unpaid, forced labor, badly treated, while others still have hope.
This is a huge privilege and honor, given everything that Brian has done for Canadians. Since as far back as before I was even born, Brian was the Premier of Newfoundland from March 1979 to April 1989, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Brian?
March to March.
Yeah, there you go. So a full decade, and in that time, he was one of the signatories of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And now here we are, it's 2022, and we see that very same charter is under attack. So we have Brian here to unpack a lot, to address a lot, to give his expert background and experience and opinions.
This
on what's
is that
happening.
message to
And
you,
we're just gonna
the
start
unvaccinated.
off,
Even if I were pollinated and fully vaccinated, I would admire the unvaccinated for withstanding the greatest pressure I've ever seen. From partners, parents, children, friends, colleagues, and even doctors. People who are capable of such personality, courage, and critical ability are undoubtedly the best part of humanity. They are everywhere, in all ages, levels of education, states, and ideas. They are of a special kind. They are the soldiers that every army of light wants to have in its ranks. They are the parent that every child wants to have.
I don't think they're
and
better.
The children that every parent
What?
dreams of having.
Hold on.
They are beings above the average of their societies. They are the essence of the people who have, well, built all cultures and conquered horizons. They are there, next to you. They look normal, but
I
they
disagree.
are superheroes. They did what others could not. They were the tree that withstood the hurricane of insults,
I
discrimination.
just don't want. Yeah,
and
I just
social
want
exclusion.
discrimination.
And they did it because they thought they were alone. And they believed that, well, they were the only ones. Banned from their families'
that's
tables at
true.
Christmas,
That's
they never
true.
saw anything so cruel. They lost their jobs, let their careers sink, had no more money, but they didn't care. They suffered
That is
immeasurable discrimination, denunciation, betrayal, and humiliation, but they kept on going. Never before in humanity has there been such a casting. Now,
In
we all
humanity,
know
yes, there
who
has.
are the best on the planet
It's
Earth.
probably the worst thing
Men,
since like the
women,
Iraq
young,
War.
old, rich,
But
poor, of all races or religions, the unvaccinated, the chosen of the invisible ark, the only ones who managed to resist when everything collapsed.
yo, Ninja
That's you.
Lifestyle.
You
What's up, man?
passed
Welcome back,
an
dude,
unimaginable
to fucking
test that
Twitch.
Many of the toughest Marines, commandos,
Serious,
Green
not
Berets,
being meaning.
astronauts, and even geniuses could not withstand.
God, humanity.
You are made of the stuff of the greatest who ever lived. Those heroes born
You are.
among ordinary men who glow in the dark. Remember, you're the voice. And it's time to make it count.
You are the best. It's too- I pardon me. Yeah, well, I mean, fucking, I just don't want discrimination. He started off really funny. That was hilarious, Baron. Yo, what's up, Ninja? Welcome back, man. Fucking fuck Twitch. This bullshit of Twitch. Dude, you fucking you doing what you did had been posted that video. Unironically. Oh. Well, I mean, I'm sure some people feel that way, especially for people that really tried to enforce the discrimination. It's not that someone's better than another, but yeah, they are wrong. For sure. If you want to say one's better than another, sure. I would like to think it's like temporarily. If that video is a joke. Yeah. Oh, I don't think so. Oh, you mean from the... Well, yeah, when they said it's the greatest thing of humanity, that it's obviously not true. It's up there. It's definitely up there. Maybe with the number of people on Earth. Smarter than... Yeah, exaggeration, dude. You fucking... Okay, who posted it? Let's see the source. Holy shit, dude. Oh, yeah, because he also started off like an asshole. He started off the video like an asshole.
This is that message to you, the unvaccinated. Even if I were pollinated and fully vaccinated, I would admire the unvaccinated for withstanding the greatest pressure
Okay,
I've ever
I don't
seen.
think I can't watch this
From
again.
partners, parents.
It's cool. It's cool. Genesis. Pretty epic. I'm gonna favorite this. Yo, Ninja Man, welcome back, dude. You know, it's so ridiculous. Like, it's been a while since I watched a hockey game, and ironically, it's due to the vaccine mandate, because I figured, how can I watch a game if they're fucking discriminating, right? It's just, and the whole COVID thing with the reduced number of players changes the game completely. It reduces the depth of the lines of the teams. Anyways. Where the fuck was I going with this? Yeah. I wouldn't have watched, like, you streaming that, or playing that, got me interested again in it. It's the same thing with the fucking Battle of the Barracks. The commentating and shit. I was subscribed to Barracks, and I wasn't, and then I saw Ninja's thing, and I resubscribed. On YouTube. Whatever. Fiverr.com. Holy shit, I missed a lot of text. Sorry, guys. Someone wrote that. I heard some fake news reporter to write it. Holy shit, guys. You guys can fucking just cut through all the bullshit and see the truth. That's crazy.
Brian, by just letting you introduce yourself. And tell
I
us
guess
what you want to
I
start us
luckily
off
saw it
with.
at the beginning. They said something so
Yeah, well,
ridiculous.
fine.
Like,
The
ego, literally the ego thing. That's what I was like.
From March 1979 to March 1989. As a matter of fact, when I got elected leader of the party and automatically premier at the time, I was interviewed on the in the hall of the leadership convention, and I had just won the leadership.
So this guy
Premier, and of course,
is the last living
first question,
authors of the 1980 Charter of Rights of Freedom in Canada, which is law, which says like freedom of movement, freedom of freedom from the press, freedom of like choice for shit.
At the leadership convention,
So it's like an interview with him.
Elected. And I said, well, I think
Which is
10
long.
years
Oh,
would
it's
be
not
long
Nick.
enough for any person if, in fact, the people of that jurisdiction wanted to continue to support me.
Which is law, yeah.
And sure enough,
Well, hopefully,
when
like,
10 years was up, I never forgot that
it's so ironic
statement
because
that I made. I tried
Justin
to get
Trudeau,
to the
it was
day.
Pierre Trudeau's
I tried to get
that
to the day, but I was unable to book
wrote, or was the
hotel.
president, or the prime minister when the Charter of Rights of Freedom. But apparently he wanted to like fuck it up. Apparently he wanted to change a lot of it, but the commission, including Brian Peckford, him, like got in the way and didn't let that happen. He tried to rush it through or some shit or delay it or some shit.
Of constitution making, And patriation
Oh,
of the
yeah.
Constitution, bringing the
I told Dick, I
Constitution home
wrote
from
Dick, I
London
told
for
him.
good,
I was going to write
so that
Baron
we
too, that
we have complete sovereignty. Up until 1981, 82, we didn't have complete
the
sovereignty
only
as a
ban,
country
dude,
because
Twitch only bans.
our Constitution had to be amended in
I gotta turn
London.
this guy down.
And so that's what the patriation was all about. And so it was both the patriation and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms were the
Twitch
two
only bans
big,
top content like
items,
Amaranth
if you
and
will,
Ninja.
to try to get solved. And this had been tried for decades.
It's ridiculous.
Ever since John Deacon Baker's
Oh,
Bill
seriously,
of
still
Rights
fuck
in
Twitch, man.
1960, there had been a
That's
move
lame as
afoot
shit.
to make
You made a
the
good point,
Bill of
Ninja.
Rights
I watched the
because
podcast.
the Bill of Rights was only
You
a
said, hey, that
federal
fucking
act,
streaming
therefore
website
only applied to
didn't
federal
get
jurisdiction.
shut down. And you said
Didn't
it
apply,
got
therefore,
stronger.
to every person
It's
in
true,
the
but
country.
people that are probably watching
So
probably
with
went to that
that
streaming
was an
website.
impetus to
'Cause you
do
got them
more
hooked on the
to
game.
make something not only a federal act,
You
but
need
a
to see the
constitution,
result.
which would therefore, as
You
we
set the
thought at
stage.
time,
You had the
and
bet.
everybody thought at the time and still
I don't
thinks
even know what
today,
happened. I don't even know the end of that game.
makes it more difficult to change. Well, we know.
Viewers
we know
A-OK,
what's happened
yeah.
to that, because if somebody's around to do
It's crazy.
dictatorial things, laws don't matter.
I'm amazed. They must have some sort of jingle or something. As you said, it's the sound of the hockey game, but I think it's like, I don't know, man.
Arose, and there seemed to be a feeling among the 10 first premiers,
crazy.
first ministers, and the prime minister that the time was right to try this again. There had been in the 70s a real big push to do this, and there was a conference in Victoria, British Columbia, and it was called like the Victoria Conference, and there's almost a Victoria formula for patriating the Constitution. Because one of the big stumbling blocks to
I don't
doing that
wanna-
and bringing the Constitution
I don't
home
know if he will. Oh, he fucking made a podcast out on YouTube. He streamed a game, but now I'm sure he won't do it again ever.
If you didn't have a formula
And
by
learned
which
his
it could be
lesson.
changed. I mean, it would be very stupid to patriate a constitution and not have in how
Golden
you can change
Knights.
it in the future.
Leafs.
It's like, well, don't bring it home until you got yourself settled. straight and
Yeah.
right. And so the
Thanks, man.
amending
I
formula
didn't know
became
if you wanted
a
if I
stumbling
could
block.
say that or not.
And in the 70s, when they tried to do this, that was the stumbling block. The provinces and the federal government couldn't find an amending formula.
Yeah, I think it's just great advertising,
when we
man.
got back at it again, we did find an amending formula, which was 7 provinces and 50% of the population from the last official
Yeah.
statistics. And most of the items in the Constitution could be changed by that formula. There were 4 or 5 other ones which needed unanimity, other issues needed unanimity. But the general amending
It's
formula
crazy.
was 7 provinces and 50% of the population. And that's what's in the Constitution today, the Constitution Act of 1982.
It's like, wouldn't you-
So I got really
I mean, I
involved.
understand it, but like,
No, we were at it for 17 months. And until we got what we have now,
it's just
the
lame.
Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Constitution
You'd
Act
think-
of 1982.
I don't
It all
know.
started in those 17 months, 1980.
It's probably the cable, the network TV company that's
The fall of 19
getting in the way, and not the like NHL, because
the next year, it got
the NHL
changed. The words
probably
got
make a lot of money
changed.
off of merchandise and fans and
To the
shit.
Constitution Act of 1982, because it was a bill going to the House of Commons and a bill going to
And the NHL doesn't care. They get a lump sum for advertising money, right? That's how they base the contracts of the NHL players. They have all this like $1 billion advertising contracts. They don't care. They get it up front.
Which included Aboriginal rights, which included regional economic
This is punching me out,
expansion,
like.
which included minority and language
What's
rights.
that?
That's one of the other
Yeah.
myths that I want to dispel, is that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms
Yeah,
wasn't
Twitch
negotiated
is
on
kind of, I guess, cool like that.
bargaining deal. This was a package.
I played music in my last stream, and they said they just put my videos in an after they're done streaming in an automatically unpublished state. That's it. You guys protect them from an existing video to have copyrighted content, which pretty much means nothing because they just publish it right away after, anyways, even if it's muted. Oh shit! No way. Uploading for weeks? No freaking way. When that's fucking your money making business, that's insane. Holy shit. That's crazy. Man, fuck them. That's bullshit.
Negotiating processes, right? Which
That's
involve
literally
a bunch of
withholding
things.
pay.
And this is true in this one. So My argument back to people say, why didn't you make this better in the charter?
Not withholding pay,
You
just
don't
not
understand. You know, what we got today
providing
is
pay.
quite
I guess you could
magnificent.
upload them
We
later.
were bargained
But if it's a if
with
you're a
whole bunch of
timely
other
streamer, if
things,
you're a
not just
relevant
the
streamer,
charter terms itself.
like a
So
timely,
when viewed in
time
that
sensitive, I
light,
mean.
and viewed that we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom
Catch you
of
working as a
conscience,
streamer.
freedom of the press, all in Section 2 of the Charter. We have in Section 6 freedom to move across the country or leave,
Total control.
freedom to earn a living anywhere in the
Mm.
country, right? Life, liberty, and security of the person, equality before the law, right? And the process
Yeah.
of going in
We
court
need a
is
union,
fair
man. We
for
need a fucking
everybody.
union. I'm telling you.
And it ain't
The
a
advertising
bad
money,
Well, I would say
that's what we
not.
need.
You know, I would say not. This is
Renegotiated and
the
redistributed
first real hard-hitting question is,
across
as an
fucking
officer
Twitch
of
affiliates.
we take an
Because
oath
you know how much
to the
fucking money
Constitution
they
and
get
the Charter,
off of
which now, based on your
ad
explanation,
deals?
shows
It's
how
insane.
all-encompassing that is, right? It
We get
covers all of
fucking
those
literally.
parameters that you just stipulated. So that being said, if we don't,
You're
as an
cruising for
officer,
using the U word, what
the
union?
Charter of Rights and Freedoms,
I'm
let's say
telling you,
somebody
man.
we're arresting for, let's
It's
say
got to be
domestic
done.
assault.
And
in
it's like,
doing
okay,
so,
why don't you start a
you
union?
give
It's like,
up
yeah, I
person and
could.
don't give them, the
Is
right
the
to call
U
their
word
attorney,
a
right, based on
union?
their charter right to do so. The more often than not, that case gets tossed, and we end up getting scrutinized. So my question is
Let's
how
hope-
is
let's
the
start a
government
union.
getting away with doing this right now? How are they not having
No,
to
seriously,
call
for
the fire
like,
and they're being
I don't know how much the ad
uh,
money. We can look it up for the ad money
processes
for the
undergoing
Twitch
right now to address them?
Twitch ad money.
Exactly.
It's got to
That is
be.
the great question that everybody has, and
I don't
the
even
only
know.
answer I have for it because the governments are
I know the
being
NBA
ignored.
is
They're
like over
ignoring
1
the
billion.
Constitution. They're ignoring the very
Could be
thing
like
that you as an officer and everybody
10
else
billion.
below the Prime Minister,
Could be more.
below the Parliament, knows you have
Twitch,
to
I don't know.
in the conduct
500 million?
of your law enforcement activities
Even more?
and other people according to it. I mean, all the departments and all the governments across Canada.
If you guys don't change the
Very
rules of
often
streaming
they're told right
Twitch.
from the start, you know, as you conduct your business here in this department and that department, make sure, and you're going to bring in new
You make a good point. That's what I mean. We need everybody. We need everybody involved. Like literally
cabinet, you better make
everybody.
sure you have Justice Department
Damn it, you're right.
check out
Amazon.
whether
Amazon is
you
the
are
negotiator.
This is common right across the country.
They're like literally the biggest company in the fucking
The
world.
last 2 years, these governments completely ignoring the very thing that they've been following since 1982. It's like unbelievable. And to show you how unbelievable it all is, just yesterday,
Dang
I
man,
read in the Toronto
it's too real.
Sun
It's too real,
an
dudes.
article by Senator
We're going down a
David
rabbit hole
Wells,
path.
who was a senator from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, the advertisement needs to be, and it could be just a simple
a
thing, redistributed to all affiliates, all
in the sense that he was taking
partners.
some of the Emergencies Act, and here was a senator coming out publicly
just an
in a
equal lump
newspaper
sum
in the
divided,
coverage
or even if it's
and saying that how
correlated with viewership. That's fine. It just needs to be proper amounts.
mentioned the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He mentioned in one part of his essay
Turn a profit.
violation of the Constitution, but he didn't
Where'd you hear that from, Nick?
that the violations that were happening was with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and people's individual rights and freedoms. And so here you
Well,
have
I have like years of gigabytes of streams on my channel. The entire last 2 years of my life are are on the hard drive somewhere. There's got to be over 200 gigabytes on a server. That's what I mean. I think the end of the world is going to come from someone taking a selfie, and it's going to overload the servers, and it's going to cause a meltdown of the nuclear reactors, and there's going to be a nuclear meltdown, likely in like California, or like Pickering, Ontario, which is just east of Toronto.
They're not mentioning the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then some who do, who think that they're on the right track, ignore some of the most
Sure seems
important
profitable. Yeah, 50%. Yeah, exactly. 50% thing. That's exactly what I'm saying. So it's like, sure, they're taking a huge cut there,
of the Charter, which is
and
Canada. It's founded on the
or what about the advertising money? That's the thing that nobody's talking
and
about.
the rule of law. And there are court decisions today that have not even mentioned that. And
Oh,
by the way,
definitely,
that's the
Dick.
first
Definitely.
words of
They're definitely. That's
Those
like.
are the first words of the Charter. And as
Yeah,
I
the business
remember
model,
everybody,
100%.
At the end of that sentence, There's a grammatical
But again,
notation called a colon.
even with
It's
them
not a
taking
period.
50%,
It's not a comma.
it's just the
not a
ad. Like we're getting.
It's a
I
colon.
don't even know if we're getting 1% of the advertising distributed across everybody. I'm not certain.
Everything is subject to this. And it is now,
Great
I
deal for the
understand,
streaming
it
now.
has been deliberate.
Really?
Because in our secular society, people want to downplay God.
Oh, with like the thing getting smaller, I turned that off. I said no because it's gonna mess. Where it like shrinks and then it puts the ad on underneath. No, I didn't do that because what if I'm recording? My recording goes down for a speed run and then I end up with this fucking fucked up. I'm in the middle of a speed run and it like shrinks and this fucking like Pfizer comes down on the bottom. I'm lose my shit. Fucking world record run. PB run.
So that's in my understanding. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ryan, but just
Got immediately complaints. It's like 3 minutes of ads every hour. Oh wow. Really? But how much money do you get? Do you know? I get like nothing. With the old settings.
And going through the court processes and working as a police officer.
Oh wow. I have an ad blocker, but it just blocks the ad. I still have to wait the time. Usually it's like 10 seconds. It used to block it immediately, but percent goes from 30 to 50 when you fuck your viewer.
Astounding for you and me to understand. Only in the last 2 months, a female judge in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador had a case come before her. I think it was at the Supreme Court of the province.
That's crazy.
About a number of people who apparently were involved in drugs, allegedly involved in drugs. So the police were following these people, but they did.
And if you're subscribed, it doesn't come up.
Under the charter as to the rights of the individual, and barged into this
I guess not.
house or building or whatever it was, and completely ignored the charter rights of.
Hey man, that'd be good for you.
Try to find cash.
Good for you, Ninja. People fucking subscribing more, maybe.
The people involved got a lawyer, took it to court, and the judge threw out.
They probably would.
The charges against
Not in like a negative hate way, but just to get that transaction started.
Meanwhile, it was found that a huge cache of drugs were found in that building.
Lowest setting. Fewest ads possible. Cool, man.
Got off completely because
That's dope.
the police
Should advertise that.
proper procedure under the charter.
Should tell people.
So this is only
$5 a month.
Did you see that anywhere?
Money and subs. Yeah, nice. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing the info, man. I make like, I don't know, not very much. I think like $1 over like the last 6 months or something.
Of the Supreme Court of the province actually throwing out something based completely on the provisions of the charter.
From the ads, I mean.
And that's incredible to me because what it tells me is that
it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense.
Cherry picking when they want to apply the chart, and that it's incredible because we've seen over the last 2 years
doesn't make any sense at all.
In one facet, yet in another, it's
exactly. Not only is it being cherry picked when to use it, when not to use it, even when they're using it, they cherry pick what provisions of the charter they're going to use. Because in the cases of British Columbia and Manitoba, at the trial division of the Supreme Court of those two provinces, they already ruled against the charter and ruled for the two governments. These issues are being appealed to the courts of appeal.
Yeah, man.
Of both provinces. But there is two decisions out there. And in both cases, they ignored the supremacy of God and the rule of law as principles which are going to guide their decision when it's rendered. So the cherry picking goes on of whether or not I'm going to use the charter. Cherry picking
Really?
goes on even when I use the charter, I'll cherry pick what provisions I use.
That's what I mean. We don't know the. Well, we could if it's scalable. We have two data points now, right? So we can at least see if it's a linear increase, right? We have Ninja's info and we have mine. I could estimate the number of
is, well, this is a
of
pandemic,
like,
so that's a different set of
we
circumstances.
roughly
Regardless of
estimate
like, if it's a
fucking
unique
viewers
emergency. So
per
to that, I
$5
ask you,
per
we all know
month,
that Section
and
33, the
mine.
notwithstanding clause, says that it has to be demonstrably justified to remove
Better buy some ears.
the Charter of Rights and Freedoms from the Canadian public. Has that been done?
2 points. It's Section 1, not Section 33, because Section 3 is not being used at all in the pandemic. Section 3 is a notwithstanding clause where governments can bring in special legislation. They have to go through their legislatures. So 33 has not been an issue in the pandemic. The issue has been with Section 1. Section 1 of the Charter says that governments can override these rights and freedoms that are defined for individuals in Canada.
Yo, thanks for being here, guys. You guys really made my Halloween. Really made my day.
Under law, with reasonable limits
I wasn't
within a
fucking
fair
fishing for
free and
fucking
democratic society. Now,
compliments with my
here's my
title. I was
argument.
just
Two
fucking
arguments on that.
kind of
Once
just
again,
being
this
serious.
gets very
Like,
personal. Nobody will carry
maybe these
it.
weights
I
will
write it on my
bring me,
blog. I
make me
said
happy.
200 people, and so on. Here's my two arguments, which nobody has been able to effectively rebut. One, I was there when this was written. I have
Okay, I think I'm gonna start.
Section 1's intent was to be used. This is why it was put in the Constitution. This is why the Bill of Rights wasn't effective. Not only because it didn't cover everybody, right? But it wasn't permanent because it could be changed by any majority government. So by putting it in the Constitution, it's making it more difficult to change. This is why we were putting it in the Constitution. So it would be left, couldn't be changed very quickly. So the intent is used in law. Supreme Court of Canada, other judgments have come out where they've used intent. What was the intent of this section? Well, the intent of Section 1 was to be used only in times of great peril, when the state was in peril, when there was an insurrection, when there was a war, when the existence of the state was in peril. That was the intent of Section 1. I was there. That was the intent. Now, go down to Section 4, only 2 sections down in the Charter, and it tells you, it gives you the idea that that's what we were thinking about, because in Section 4, where the Parliament's time might have to be extended beyond 5 years, or when there is war and insurrection kind of situation, you can extend the life of Parliament, but only in state of war or insurrection or peril to the state. So that was our idea. That was the idea, and it's implanted right there in the Charter itself. So it doesn't even apply in this case, because the pandemic and the virus, it was a 99%, is a 99% recovery rate, over 99%, and a fatality rate of less than 1%. That's hardly a condition where the state is in peril. So, number one, it does not apply, and therefore what the governments are doing is unconstitutional. Number two, and here's where everybody really gets upset with me, and therefore doesn't want to hear me, is this. Okay, I'm a reasonable person. I'm a reasonable former First Minister. I've been through wars. I spent 17 years in politics and 10 years as First Minister. I'm reasonable. I'll take you on that Section 1 does apply, even though I know it doesn't. But I'll take you on, and it does apply. Have the governments met the 4 tests that are in Section 1, demonstrably justified under law, reasonable limits in a fair and democratic, free and democratic society? And you take the first one and the fourth one, for sure, they categorically, no government in any of its mandates has demonstrably justified what they are doing. Because demonstrably justify means, well, some kind of cost-benefit analysis of your proposal to see whether the benefits outweigh the costs. Nobody in Canada, no government of all of 14 governments has done cost-benefit analysis. Because you know what? The governments, including Premier Kennedy, who now had to resign, got captured by a very narrow clinical view of society. The clinical view came out of, the Imperial College of London says there are going to be millions dead on the streets. It's proved to be wrong, right? University of Washington took over from the Imperial College of London and continued that doomsday scenario, which was proven to be wrong. And now it's been shown that 90 days into the pandemic, the experts knew that the cure was going to be worse than the disease. They knew it. There were numbers coming out that showed it. So, even if Section 1 applies, the tests that are necessary to relieve governments of giving everybody their rights and freedoms, continuing to have their rights and freedoms, they never met them. They never met them. And on this fourth one, free and democratic society. A free and democratic society means that in Canada, a parliamentary democracy. We have parliaments, 14 of them. The 3 territories have parliaments too, even though they're not full provinces. So we have 14 legislatures. And what did they do during the pandemic? They opened and closed it as fast as they could, gave themselves more power, and forgot the parliament. In any decent, free and democratic society like we've done before, we would have a parliamentary committee established, which would oversee and put a check and a balance on what the government was proposing. Is this really necessary? And had public hearings and brought in other experts outside of the government, medical experts, and then had a balance of what was going on, and then would make a report. And they could have done it quickly. Didn't have to be, 5 or 6 months. It could have been done in a few weeks. They could have involved Parliament, and not only involved it for those 2 or 3 weeks, but all the way through the pandemic, to ensure that we were living in a free and democratic society and not ruled by the tyranny of one political party that had a deal with a very minor other political party to stay in power.
And you know what? I'm going to touch on a point you made, because you talked about demonstrably justified. And somebody who's listening to this might say, well, where do you back these assertions that it's 99% plus survival rate and everything else? So I'm going to plug this here now and say that Mr. Peckford and myself were on a conference call the other day that was widely distributed across North America that had a panel of experts from every possible field, and some of the heaviest hitters, and they presented with data. And the one lawyer that joined, Thomas Renz from the U.S., he also presented data that he was able to quantify through Medicare data that he had subpoenaed. So we talk about what the survival rate is, and you make that assertion here, and I know the naysayers might say, well, that's not accurate, where do you make that up? Well, we can back up data, and if you go to policeonguard.ca and watch, you can see for yourself.
And they can go to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which are the lawyers who are fighting my case, my federal lawsuit, okay? Go to their site, Canadian, 100% Canadian, not financed by anybody, only individual donors, okay? The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and go to their research section, and they have tabulated the numbers from every jurisdiction in Canada and show from government's own numbers, Canadian government's own numbers, over 99% recovery and less than a 1% fatality rate. Our own Canadian numbers.
Well, it's incredible, right? I mean, I hear this and I've seen this. I've seen the data. I've gone through it and I've looked at it for myself to make sure that I'm not way off base speaking at a school looking like an idiot. And going through the data, the numbers, I made quite a clear, concise decision on what I believe to be true, because it's their data that I was looking for. So to that end, I go one layer further and I talk about, there was a recent death report from BC that showed what is killing provincial members of BC, like citizens of BC, and COVID was number 9. And way higher up on that list was liver failure and tobacco use and all that. And why are they not then shutting down the charter to stop the dissemination and distribution of alcohol and cigarettes? Right? If that's what they're after, if they're about saving lives, just one life and everything else we've heard them say. Well, to me, just the weight isn't there. It doesn't measure up. It doesn't measure up.
Yeah, there's over 40 studies out which show that vitamin D, anybody who had adequate levels of vitamin D in their system, right, were hospitalized less if they got COVID than those who didn't have sufficient levels of vitamin D in their system. Over 40 studies from all over the world just on vitamin D. And they didn't, what government has come up with a program promoting vitamin D? Do you know what I got to do in BC? So, okay, I early on, like you, saw something wrong here. These people are producing this product, but I'm standing behind it. No responsibility. Got complete immunity from anything that goes wrong with the product. That was weird to me. How was that? And then it's experimental. Most vaccines take years to get final approval because of the long-term effects that they got to study. So I got that really bugged me altogether. But then when I came to vitamin D, I said to my doctor, we want to get a vitamin D test. He said, I guess that would be a good idea. go up to my medical place and get free vaccines, experimental vaccines free. When I went to go and get a vitamin D test, it cost me $65. So that's how crooked our system is, how mixed up our system is. I can get free experimental vaccine, which is now causing all kinds of problems with all kinds of people, but I couldn't get a free vitamin D test, which over decades and decades and decades has proven to be extremely essential for your immunity and for good health. And so there's the dichotomy of it all, there's the hypocrisy of it all, and it just speaks to how tangled up we got early on when this virus came around. I spoke to students last night here in my little city. I was explaining to them that very thing. And I said, I can understand, and I could see the kids sort of nodding to me. I said, let's go back to March 2020, when the Imperial College of London, which was, in most people's mind around the world, was one of the big academic pedestals, right, upon which we almost pray. When they came out and said this new virus that's around, we're going to have millions dying in the streets. Well, that's when fear and mass psychosis took over, and it's been running downhill ever since, and nobody's been able to arrest it and say this was irrational and wrong. And then when the University of Washington took over, and this is what the White House and all of the major governments in the world, Boris Johnson in the UK, Macron in France, all of them in Germany and so on, all looked to was these reports that came out. And so their response was based upon irrational analysis by the Imperial College. So that first 90 days or so, when we got into this, it was just all based on irrationality, and that's continued ever since. And the kids sort of understood, the students sort of understood that, and how, because they know themselves in their own, even small little lives that are only 15 or 20 years old, where fear can enter the picture and cause a whole bunch of problems for them, when later they find out that this was all based on fear, not based on fact.
Well, and to that end, one of the things that I've really started to see as a troubling issue in Canada, and this is monumentally troubling, not just peripherally so. You see this happening. What I'm speaking to is, we're a democratic country, we're a democratic society, and we see a fear-based narrative that's being pushed out there in the Canadian public. And to those that don't see a counterbalance to it because they haven't heard it, I understand the fear. But where my concern is this: there are so many doctors now that are morally injured from what they have seen happen throughout COVID and the instruction they were given. And then when they asked questions or they spoke out, they were censored and delicensed. And I've heard people say in response, "Oh, they're quack doctors." Okay, you might have 5 quack doctors in any given situation on a federal scale or even a provincial scale. But when you have thousands and thousands of doctors all standing up and speaking up and saying, "Listen, this is not right, something's wrong here, we are here on the front lines, we are seeing what's happening," and they get shut down and their licenses are pulled, that should be a shot off the bow for people to go, whoa, what am I being told? Is it true? And do I need to dig deeper? And that's why we're here. And that's why I appreciate this so much, because we need to really get the truth out there for people to make informed consent decisions, because that's not being allowed right now.
Exactly. There just recently 17,000 came out. I put it on my blog last week. 17,000 medical professionals and researchers in the medical field came out all together and said, this has got to stop. 17,000 credentialed scientists and medical professionals came out and said that. So you're right. I mean, the data, the big problem you've got is not that they're not coming out, and you've got Doctors for Ethics, for example, in Europe, which got members in Canada and the United States. I go into their website all the time, Doctors for Ethics. I go into the Swiss Policy Research, which is another group. They're producing all kinds of wonderful, bringing together all the studies from all over the world. Dr. Brian Bridle in Ontario, for example, Dr. Eric Payne in Alberta, Dr. Roger Hodgkinson, Dr. Paul Alexander, who got his work, did all of his, most of his academic work, besides at Oxford, at McMaster University in Hamilton, who was an advisor to him, who then became an advisor to the White House, and is out there on organizations with me right now. Paul Alexander is, and Dr. Hodgkinson, and Dr. Eric Payne, and Dr. Brian Boyle. They're all on a board of advisors of Take Back Your Freedoms, which is an organization that I chair, for example. And so I know all of this data, right? And so you're right, but our problem is this. I call it the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I go back to the book of Revelation. It's the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Big government, big pharma, big media, big tech. And they have effectively shut down our normal flow of information in a democratic society. And the big media, in this case, they signed the Trusted News Initiative back a year and a half, 2 years ago. CBC was right in the forefront of it. BBC was right in the forefront. Associated Press, all of the main big media organizations. We will not carry anything that's negative to the virus and to the vaccine. That's what they signed. And then the federal government, almost 2 years ago now, announced, after lobbying from the press, that they will contribute to the press to keep them in operation $600 million over 3 years. So all of the newspapers in Canada used to carry my letters from time to time as a former premier commenting upon public policy. Suddenly I was shut down. For 2 years, nobody would carry anything I said. So that's our problem, that even when all these wonderful independent researchers can come out, they can only get it out on their own websites and through conferences and something like we had yesterday, those kinds of things, where we are on Zoom or on some other independent vehicle, so that we can transmit this information out to the public, because the normal process for transmitting this information has been closed to us.
Oh, it's so true. And I get asked a lot, what can we do about it? Like, we get our inbox blown up and people coming to me personally that know me, and they say, like, what can we do? What is the best course of action as Canadians to make sure the government is held accountable, media is held accountable? And, I'm going to ask you that question now, because you might have a different approach and spin on it than I do, and my answer's back to you.
Well, I've come to the conclusion, especially in the last 6 months, of watching doctors losing their licenses, watching the political process unfold, that I think, and I wrote about this again this morning. Since I got up this morning, I have stuff in my head. I wake up and I have this stuff in my head, and I read a new press statement. And I'm sort of convinced now, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to clean up the political parties. Because how can we support a political party if they themselves are not clean? Now, right now, those parties that are in the House of Commons, those major English language parties, if you will, I'm not going to deal with the Quebec party, because I think they're there unconstitutionally anyway, because they never signed on to the Constitution Act of 1982. So I'm only going to deal with the parties that are in English Canada, and also they campaign in French Canada as well. So there's the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP Party, and the Green Party. Okay? Not one of those parties publishes their financial statements on their party website. Any member of the Conservative Party, Liberal Party, NDP Party, Green Party do not know where their money goes when they contribute to these parties. There's no audited financial statements produced. I've been writing about this now for about 3 months. And of course, it's hard to get any thing like this published. So I go right back to basics. So if the people that we are supporting, who are going to be our government in the future, are not producing their own financial statements, how can we trust them? Right? How can we trust them to manage our tax money when they form the government? And so there's a basic problem here. Okay? That's number one. Okay. Number two, the Prime Minister of Canada today has broken the law 5 times, and yet he can still sit in the Parliament of Canada. One would think that some MP somewhere, from some party or some independent movement, but particularly the parties themselves, would propose a resolution in the House of Commons saying any MP who breaks the laws that we're creating cannot sit in the Parliament. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to happen? Most Canadians think that's automatic now. It's not. It's not. Prime Minister is Exhibit A. He's sitting in the Parliament after breaking the law 5 times. And so, and that's conclusive. That's not hearsay. That's the Ethics and Conflict Commissioner's report, independent report, that's out there for anybody to read on the website of the Conflict of Interest, okay, Ethics Commissioner's website. And nobody has challenged it as being not factual and true. The law, the Conflict of Interest law has been broken 5 times by our Prime Minister. And Mr. Morneau, when he was Finance Minister, he broke the law too, because he didn't disclose an estate that he had in France when he was supposed to. And his argument was he forgot about it, or he didn't know that was necessary. But he did, because he did disclose other financial assets. So, he was lying. So that's number 2. So we've got to clean up that an MP in Ottawa and in the province, MLAs and MPPs as well, cannot sit and become an MP if they've broken the law that they were supposed to be adhering to and creating in their parliaments. So those are 2 things that could be done right now. We clean up the political parties where there is, under the Elections Act or under some relevant legislation, requirement under law that every registered political party in Canada has to produce annually audited financial statements of their entity, of their organization. Then we know where they spent the money. Then we can decide whether we're going to support this party or the other party based on how transparent and accountable they are. So those are two things, right? MP can't serve, so we got to go back to basics and clean up our political parties. Then we've got to clean up. So this is the 3rd thing we got to do. We got to bring power back to the parliaments in Toronto, in Ottawa, in St. John's, in Victoria, Edmonton, Iqaluit, wherever there's a regional parliament. They all must be cleaned up so that the parliament has power again, not the Premier's office, not the Prime Minister's office. And this can be done without a shot being fired and without a new law being passed, because it's already on the books. The Prime Minister's office is not supposed to have the power that they are exerting today. When Jody Wilson-Raybould was Minister of Justice and Attorney General, right? What happened to her? The Prime Minister's office interfered in the course of obstructing justice. It's one of the laws that the Prime Minister wrote. He tried, and his office tried to obstruct justice. The Justice Department had already decided that SNC-Lavalin should go to court because they had sufficient evidence that the court was warranted.
Yeah, I mean, if you start off,
Made that decision. Prime Minister
if you ignore the first hour where I was just chilling and talk with you, yeah.
We would do an out-of-court settlement with SNC-Lavalin.
Yeah, yours is high intensity. You don't. I take long breaks. I take pretty long breaks. I take like 2, 3, 4 minute breaks
And then
sometimes
the parliamentary committee was formed to review it. And the
in order to do more. You know what I mean?
down,
I take longer breaks in order to do more.
Raybould still had information she wanted to
And I work out less frequently than you. My frequency is less, I think.
because it was a tyranny of the
I
majority.
don't know. That's just like me coping, but I don't know. That's what I find.
They had the majority on the committee. Now, here's what can be done very simply. Is that parliamentary committees cannot be shut down by the majority if the witnesses that are appearing before them are credible and have additional information to present, especially when it's information critical to the pursuit of justice in our country. So you'd have conditions under where you could and could not override the majority, but the facts themselves will decide whether in fact that is true or not. So the parliamentary committee got to get its power back. The MP got to get its power back. You go to an MP today and say, I want you to put this resolution on the order paper. He'll come back, he or she will come back to you and say, well, the list is so long now, 3 years from now. I tried that, by the way. I know that to be a fact because I went to an MP and asked in writing. Okay, 3 years before they even get a private member's resolution because it's so backed up. We have to clean up Parliament so that MPs have an opportunity in a timely fashion within the term of that Parliament to present resolutions. So we got to be more efficient, right? within our
And
parliament.
how do we make that happen? How do we make that happen? That's my question.
Parliament itself can make that happen. Parliament itself has to do that. So the citizens have to put pressure upon their MPs, upon their parties, to see these changes happen. One, no MP can serve if they've broken the law, if they have been found guilty of breaking the law in the due course of process of our court system. If you've been charged, if the ethics or the conflict of interest commissioner has ruled that you have broken the law, then you cannot serve. You cannot serve. Because there's no penalties there, right? You see, there's a conflict of interest law, but there's no penalties if you break it for an MP. So what's the good of the law if there's no penalties? So people say, well, we got a conflict of interest law, but we're a modern democracy. Yes, but where are the penalties if you break it? I think it's $100. The Prime Minister is just a fine up to $1,000. So I mean, so these are the kinds of fundamentals that Canadians have missed over the years, right? We've become complacent and allowed the Parliament power to move from the Parliament itself to the Cabinet and then to the Prime Minister's office. If you try to find out tomorrow how many people work for the Prime Minister's office, you would have a job to find out. I did it for quite a few days and weeks, and it comes out to right now about 1,500 to 1,600 just reporting to the Prime Minister of Canada, even though he has 7,000 deputy ministers and assistant deputy ministers and other like people that he appoints directly. He already has 7,000 that he appoints directly and therefore can hire or fire and therefore report to him in that sense. And now he needs another 1,500, 1,600 that report directly to him in the Privy Council office and the Prime Minister's office. Crazy. So what has happened, and you know this, if you talk to any minister in Ottawa today on a private basis, or an MP, or parliamentary secretary, they'll tell you nothing happens unless they check the Prime Minister's office. Even cabinet committees. Now, one time in Canada, and it might be even in your lifetime, there were very strong regional ministers. If you look back in the recent history, and really strong ministers, remember Jean Chrétien, Marc Lalonde, right, from Quebec, and there were 4 or 5 other really strong ministers. There was Alan McKechnie from Nova Scotia years ago, John Crosbie from Newfoundland, Don Mazinkowski from Alberta, Lloyd Axworthy from Manitoba, right? I mean, you can go on and on. These are the ones that just come to mind now. They were strong regional ministers. They're gone. You can't point to any regional minister now that from Ontario or Quebec has any power. It's all concentrated in the Prime Minister's office. That's why he has 1,500 people that are working for him directly, besides all these deputy ministers. So we can tomorrow, if we really want, if you really get, you can talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk. And that's what's happening. People are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk and saying, I know enough about my political system that we can change a lot of it without a shot being fired and without even very much change to our existing legislation. Just enforce what we already have. Change the conflict of interest law, yes. It's already there, amended so that the penalties fit the crime. So that people who are MPs, who we're supposed to look up to, are not allowed to sit in that parliament if they've broken our laws, right?
So would you think that to be the first and most important step? And would that be something an MP could bring forward as a bill to have? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So that being said, so here's my call to action then for anybody that's watching and potentially even an MP who might realize that something is not right here and you're wondering what it is you can do. You heard it from the Honorable Brian Peckford himself here. Bring forward a bill. Bring forward a bill to have that amended in the House so that we can bring forward the change that we're discussing here, so that there is an actual consequence for going forward and committing criminal offenses or any offenses while holding the seat of an MP or a Prime Minister. And people, Canadians, my fellow brothers and sisters, hearing this now, get on the horn with your MPs. Get active. This isn't about violence. They try to paint the convoys and all these things as violent insurrections and this nonsense. The reality is people move the needle. Get on the horn. Make your voices heard. That's democracy.
And go to your political party that you support and say to whoever your local president of your district association is, riding association, get on the horn and tell them, I want to see the financial statements of my party. I'm contributing to it every year and I don't know where my money is going. show me the audited financial statement for our party. Please, please. This is democracy. So there's two things that any citizen of Canada can do, no matter where they live. Go to your local provincial party, go to your local MP and federal party, and ask them those questions to say, I want you to put a bill in that no MP or MLA or MPP can serve in the Parliament, that they've broken the law, the conflict of interest law, or any other law of Canada. Right? And two, I want to see the financial statements to my political party that I support. There's two things that any Canadian can do today.
And you know what? That's incredible, because we get asked the question all the time, and I have limited scope. I'm a police officer, got hired in 2005, and my career is wrapping up as we speak, and that's fine. But people ask me, what is it that we can do? What is it we can do? Well, there you go. There are two things. Together, as Canadians, if everybody that knows what's going on right now decided to act on those two things, we could move the needle. We could affect the change we need to happen now in this country to save it and bring it back to the 1980 foundational principles that our Constitution and the Charter were based on.
Right, no question. And without any protest, without anything, you can do them automatically through your own local constituency association and with your own local MP. And you know, and I know, and Canadians know, that if enough people got mobilized and this became a bit of a movement, here's two things we can do. Party-wise, we want transparency. We want transparency and accountability. There's two ways you can do it. The political parties produce your financial statements every year. Your audited financial statements every year. Two, change the conflict of interest law so anybody who breaks any Canadian law cannot serve in Parliament. Wouldn't that go a long ways to giving accountability and transparency and people beginning to trust the system that now everybody knows cynically is not working? Those two things alone could go a long ways to making a difference in how we're governed.
Well, Brian, I'm going to say this to you. If we can make this happen, we're able to affect this positive change in this country, I'm going to fly out to where you are, and we're going to have a big celebratory hug and maybe cheers a beer or two, and we're going to celebrate getting this nation back on track. Because I'll tell you, it's been pretty daunting seeing what's happened in this country, and it's really worried me of the direction it's going to continue to go in if we don't step up and do something about it. And I'm just so proud that you are, and I'm able to do it with you.
Last September, October, I proposed, as a former First Minister, knowing that this is legal, that every First Minister, every Premier, and the Prime Minister, if they're so confident that their pandemic measures are constitutional, refer those pandemic measures to their highest court. And it's called the reference procedure. And I wrote every Premier and the Prime Minister and said, will you refer your pandemic measures to your highest court and get a constitutional opinion from your highest court in your jurisdiction? Not one of them agreed to do it.
Well,
wouldn't cost them a cent. Just refer to your highest court, who are there working and getting paid every day. And by the way, if a reference procedure was done, the court would drop the other priorities they had of hearings to come up, because here is the government, right? Here is the government of my jurisdiction asking me for constitutional reference, and they could do that within a month. Not one First Minister would do it, and I couldn't get that covered nationally in the mainstream press.
Well, I have a feeling that it's going to change, though, Brian, because I can tell you the tides seem to be changing. The temperature of this country is changing. People are fed up with having their voices just silenced and their livelihoods being taken away, their very quality of life being disintegrated from underneath them, and people are wanting to know what to do. And we, as police on guard, we've always been trying to find a democratic, peaceful way to bring about a resolution. So having this conversation with you today was paramount for us, because I wanted to pick your brain. I wanted to know from the guy that was a part of crafting the most important document in Canadian history. What can we do? What can Canadians do? How can we work together? Let's do this.
And the other thing I'm doing is, rather than just talk the talk, I knew at some point doing all these meetings and all these Zoom meetings and public meetings on Vancouver Island where I live, and getting involved, nationally with other organizations and so on. I knew I had to do something more because somebody could stand up either on a Zoom call or in one of my live public meetings and say, Brian, Mr. Peckford, that is wonderful. You're very articulate. You know what you're talking about. No question about that. You reference everything. You just don't go off the handle. And I knew somebody's going to say, why don't you walk the walk? And so I initiated a lawsuit against the federal government on their travel ban. And so my court case is ongoing right now. It's in the courts as we speak in the Federal Court of Canada. The hearing is going to be in September. It's set. And the lawyers are now fighting in the courts over the data that we're presenting, and we're fighting the data that they're presenting. That's sort of the case management part of the thing. So it's live, underway in court, and will be heard September of this year. And so likely we'll have a decision before Christmas on whether, in fact, that federal mandate to stop me from traveling in my own country, the only Western nation, by the way, right now, only Western industrialized nation that has any kind of travel ban like this in place, just Canada. So I can't travel on plane, I can't travel on train, right? And so I'm prevented from going and seeing family in Ontario, in Nova Scotia, in Newfoundland, or on whatever, and businesses are presented. Now, I have 5 other people who felt really strongly about this across the country who were on my lawsuit as well, all with individual stories to tell about how they're negatively impacted by the federal mandate. And they're part of my lawsuit as well. Meanwhile, and Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada, is also part of the same lawsuit. Because remember, the only party leader in Canada who stood up for Canadians during this pandemic and who went to jail was Maxime Bernier. Nobody else. The only person who walked the walk was Maxime Bernier. And he's part of the whole lawsuit as well. So what we did was, it's very important for your listeners and the people who are watching to understand, is that we were successful in combining all those people across the country. There were people in Ontario, had gone to lawyers there, and in Quebec. We contacted them because we knew they were going to initiate the same kind of lawsuit against the federal travel mandate. So if you've got 5 or 6 going at the same time, that's going to piss off the judge. I mean, I got to hear this 5 times. And so what the judge will do, will unilaterally, if they have the power, to combine all of those. Let's not let the judge combine them the way he wants to combine them. Let us combine them before we go, so when we go, we've got one big super punch together. And that's what we did. So the lawsuit now that's underway, my name was on it, there's other names on it as well. Because I was a former premier, of course, mine gets profiled. There are other people, beautiful, wonderful, loyal Canadians on that lawsuit as well, who are fighting what's going on. And so I want you to know, and I want your viewers to know, that we're walking the walk and we're moving this through the system. It's been accepted. Lawyers are appointed by the federal government to fight their side. My lawyers on our side, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and they've actually hired an outside lawyer to help us on it, Keith Wilson, who is also the lawyer for the Truckers' Convoy. And he is the lead lawyer on this lawsuit that I and others have initiated. So come September, there will be a hearing in 5 days, and then the judge goes away with all the data that's been fought over for the last 5 or 6 months and comes up with a decision, hopefully before Christmas. And so that may be the first big case to test the mandates that government's brought in.
Well, between the recommendations you've made for Canadians on how to effectively change what's going on in our country for the better, as well as hearing about this court case and those that are working with you, I just want to say one thing, and that is thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know I represent a lot of Canadian folks in saying that. And all I'm asking you now before we go, if you can, is do you have a message of hope for Canadians who feel like all is lost? Is there something you want to say to them before we end this interview?
Well, I think what I've said in the last 10 or 15 minutes manifests and crystallizes what each Canadian can do, either through the courts with others to challenge what's happening, or through the political party process. Go to your political party, make it more transparent, make it more accountable. Go to your MPs and MLAs and tell them to pass laws, very simple, amendment to the existing conflict of interest legislation, which is at every province and in the federal government, to make sure that MPs, when elected, are not people who can break the law and still serve, allegedly serve my best interests as a citizen of this country. So that's the hope we have. The hope lies with us in initiating change.
Amen, brother. I couldn't agree with you more, because as the saying says, a nation divided cannot stand, right? And
exactly.
Stand together or we're all going to fall.
We can make change if we really, 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 really want.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I got to thank you again for coming on and for relaying all that information and just being such a valuable resource to not just Peace on Guard and ourselves, but the rest of Canada that's watching and tuning in. God bless you, brother. Let's keep in touch. You need anything, you let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to help you.
We are Canadians. Stand tall, stand fast, stand true. We are Canadians.
You already know what the fuck we at. Yeah, bomb you stupid bitch!
With kickflip nose grind, that was insane. Wow.
What is this for? China Banks?
Yeah.
Don't go there.
China Banks is in San Francisco, the Chinatown district.
It's on Kearney Street, which is like an overpass. You can go down there and check it out. It's Portsmouth Square.
A transition about this big, space between the gap at the top.
Super tight transition, hard.
understand you used to live underground. What made you change your mind?
On each side of the pool there are 4 living creatures filled with eyes in front and behind.
Creatures? Talk about your friends? They still down there?
Yo, thanks for being here. Thank you everybody who's here. Keshev, Ninja Lifestyle, Dickus Khan, Baron Badcock, Lurkers. Happy Halloween. Mwah. I might stream later. I might not. Thanks for being here. You really boost my spirit and my happiness. Is anybody online? 7:30. Wow, already. That's crazy. Is anybody online? Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Dogger. Let's do it. Okay. See you on Dogger's stream. On the other side. See ya. Thank you. Happy Halloween.
John Marston would cry when he sees things.
Some of it is off-trail hiking.
Oh yeah. So Gyges! Well, thank you, Bob.
I know we're not lost.
We did that yesterday too. We did that twice.
Look, no, bullshit, and we have not been lost at all day. Not once. I know where we're going.
Let me tell you what you said to us. It's like 2 miles away. Then it's like, okay, 2 hours away, 3 hours away, maybe it's 4 hours away. How could you?
Did you agree to do this project?
I did. I agreed to a scouted out project.
It is scouted out. I told you that getting
Mike, okay.
Going to be guys.
Guys, it's cool. Please, you're being a smart ass. Let's just pick it up.
Okay.
I can totally find this. This is where we were. We're going more or less this way. Oh, Josh got the same piercings as me, bro. The hoop skis. Yo, shout out my dog Josh. Shout out my dog Josh. Shout out my dog Josh. Lula is free. Lula is free. Did you hear that, dog? Joey HPG needs to keep his favorite president. Oh, I gotta say it. It's right there, bud. That's how. Man. I don't know why you have to have every conversation. Not about us getting lost. We're making a documentary about a witch.
I have a camera. Doesn't hurt because we'll all look back on this and laugh heartily. Believe me.
Brazil get what is that guy? Is that guy Ben the president?
Think about how cool
Is that guy Ben the president there, or is he just now became and the old one's finally out and everybody's happy? I'm sick. And don't you dare think I'm gonna hit play until I get my answer. Is that right, dog? Hey. Hey. That's my sock. You don't play with my sock. Just sit right there. I thought I gave you some shit. He was president too. Oh, and now he's back? He's made a return? For what? What did he do? Was he dumb motherfucker star out the window with a Fabella COD fucking style? Holy shit! You guys got a Call of Duty boss for president? They're all thieves, man. Nothing changes. Backdoor corruption, mafia stuff. Wait. So wait. This guy was the president. Wait, this guy was the president from 2003 to 2011, respectively. Then he was in prison for 2016 to 2018, and now he's somehow back after all that bullshit. They brought him back. Do you think he's lived? Like, how did that happen? I gotta look it up. I gotta see. I saw it trending on Twitter. I just didn't click it. That's hard. They said fuck him. Stop the arrival of spring, says Lula official. I remember Dude, the streets are filled. You down there raging? The favelas in Rio celebrating the new president of Brazil. Dude, the favelas are going crazy right now. They're so ready to get crazy fucking imports from illegal countries.